Hello everyone, it's Jordan from AutoAid. Today we're going to be looking at this 2012 Hyundai Veracruz for an intermittent battery draw. According to the customer, this vehicle goes dead every couple days. So it's not going dead every day, but they say every 2 or 3 days they come out and they have to boost the vehicle. We were already up looking at this vehicle at another shop, and while I was up there, the vehicle was not acting up. There was no current draw when I was looking at it, so that's why we think it's an intermittent issue. So anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to hook up our scope and our voltmeter just to so we can get an on-demand reading with the, or a more precise reading with the voltmeter. But we're also going to hook the scope up so we can monitor it over time because it is an intermittent issue. Now we're going to be using our prova amp clamp around the negative battery cable, and that'll give us a good current reading. So I'm going to get this stuff hooked up, and I'll see you shortly. Alright, so we got our scope hooked up here to our current probe. We also have our voltmeter hooked up, and as you can see, that's a pretty low reading. Our current probe, we have it, the scale set at 100 millivolts equals 1 amp. So we're sitting at about, that's what, 20 milliamps, thereabouts, 20 or 30 milliamps, which really is not that much, nothing to be really concerned about. So we've also got it hooked up to the scope here. We've got a pretty long time base on it, 50 milliseconds per division, and we're just going to watch it and see if anything spikes over time. We're going to let it sit here for a little bit, and hopefully something happens. Alright, so here we have our scope shot of the current draw on this Veracruz over time. We have each division set up for about 50 seconds per division, so we've got about 8 minutes per screen. We just have a look here at where the current's sitting. About 30 milliamps, same as what we were seeing on our voltmeter. And yeah, I'm just going to go through here. Each screen is 8 minutes, so yeah, you can see here that we've got just under an hour on our screen here. Now this little blip here, it's just probably the vehicle waking up for a second, or just checking something else on the vehicle, like tire pressure or something like that, because they will occasionally wake up for a split second to check certain things. So we're not too worried about that. It's the only time it happened the entire time, and it didn't draw very much. Like if we go in here, zoom right in on one portion here, it looks like it drew about an amp for, this is a really rough estimate here, but or a really rough measurement, 88 milliseconds. So that's not going to kill a battery. I mean, if it's doing that every minute or so, then yeah, that would kill the battery. But once in about an hour, it's not going to do much. So now if we take a look at this whole time here, we have about 20 seconds, and you can see that there's a lot of gaps in between each draw there. So we're not too worried about that. We don't think that's the issue there. So unfortunately, there's no current draw happening here that we can see, so we're gonna have to let this thing sit overnight. Actually, I think we're probably gonna let it sit for 2 days and then recheck everything. So we'll leave it at that for now. Pull this out of the shop and come back in a few days. Alright, so the other day we saw there was no draw that we could really see with the vehicle in the service bay, so we pulled it outside. We drove it around for a little bit, got the battery charged up, parked it here. This was on Wednesday. It's now Friday morning. I'm just going to hook the voltmeter up, and I'm just going to take a look at the battery voltage, see what we got. 12.4, so it's dropped over the last couple days. Should be a little bit higher than that. That's a little bit low, but just gonna check the current, see if we got a draw or anything like that. Ramp clamp out, set it on the 4 amp. And we have no current draw whatsoever either, again, after 2 days. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get the keys and I'm going to flip the ignition on, and we're just going to monitor battery voltage again and see if it starts dropping. I'm kind of suspecting we may have a bad battery in this vehicle. So yeah, I'm gonna get the key and flip it on and just turn some loads on and see how quickly this battery starts to deplete. Okay, so we have the voltmeter hooked up to the vehicle. Now I'm just going to go inside and turn the key on. And right there where the voltage dips, that's just me hitting the unlock button on the fob. And you can see it dip down to under 11 volts for a split second. So now this is just me getting in the vehicle here, and key on with headlights on. It's reading about 11.3 volts, which is way too low for this. So I'm thinking we got an issue with this battery. So next what I think we're going to do is hook the scope up to the battery and just monitor voltage with the vehicle cranking and see how far it dips down when we hit it with the starter. Okay, so now we know the battery voltage drops like a stone as soon as you hit it with a minor load. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to grab the Pico scope on our laptop here and hook it up to the battery and just watch what the voltage does when we hit it with the starter, when we hit it with a real big load. I'm thinking that this thing's not even going to start this morning when we go out there, because it's just, if it drops that quick when you're turning the headlights on, you can just imagine what it's going to do when we hit it with the starter. So I'm going to get this stuff hooked up here and we'll see exactly what happens. Okay, so we got our Pico scope hooked up here to our battery. Got it recording there on the screen, so just gonna go unlock this thing and fire it up and see if it starts. So it did start. Alright, well, I guess we'll have to go and take a look and see what the scope says. So let's take a look at this Pico shot in a little more detail. Let's just zoom in on where the starter hits here. Now if we take a look at how low the voltage gets when the starter first hits, looks like it drops down to about 7.3 volts thereabouts, and that's pretty low. But that's just when the starter first hits. So let's take a look at how low it is when it's actually rolling over. Comes up to about 9 volts there, and then about 9.8 volts. So that's pretty low for a cranking vehicle. So I think what's happening with this car is the customer's leaving it for several days, and over that several days the battery is kind of depleting itself over that time. So if they're driving it for a day and they come back the next day, it obviously doesn't have a long enough time to deplete itself. But the more time goes on, the more it depletes itself, and eventually would likely cause the no start. Now, unfortunately, we were not able to experience the dead battery or the no start, just that the customer couldn't leave the car with us long enough for it to sit long enough. But I think with the evidence that we're seeing here, we're pretty comfortable with calling this battery as being no good.